What is up, YouTubes? Spoilers are done. You got questions about the Guilds of Ravnica Prerelease. We got answers. Let's get into it. Are you wondering which guild is the best? You go into a pre-release? Are you looking for advice? I'm just here to learn about the pre-release. Alrighty then, well, for a pre-release, you get a pre-release kit, which includes 6 booster packs, your spin down life counter, and a promo rare or mythic rare from that set with a date stamp on it, so you know you got it at the pre-release. It's pretty cool. What's different about Guilds of Ravnica, though, is that instead of 6 booster packs, you get 5 and then 1 seeded booster pack. That 1 seeded booster pack is going to be specific to a guild. We'll get into what that means here in a second, but what you do need to know is that you have 5 choices. Number 1 is Selesnya, which is green and white. Number 2 is Golgari, which is green and black. Number 3 is Dimir, which is blue and black. Number 4 is Izzet, which is blue and red. And number 5 is Boros, which is white and red. But why does it matter what guild you pick for your pre-release? Well, the guild you pick will have 1 seeded booster pack in your pre-release kit, meaning you'll have 5 completely random booster packs and then 1 booster pack with 14 cards that are all relevant to the guild you chose. So if you choose Dimir, which is blue and black, you're not going to have any Boros cards in it, which are white and red. So if there's a guild that you really want to try out or you're excited to play with the most, that should be the guild that you pick for your pre-release kit, assuming you have the option. It doesn't guarantee that's the deck that your pool will be best suited to make, but it does make it the front runner. So let's run through the guilds real quick. What are the quintessential commons and uncommons to look out for, as well as the mechanic that makes that guild unique in Guilds of Ravnica. I'm not going to point out the rares and the mythic rares, because I think once you open up your pack, that's the first thing you're going to look at. You're going to know right away if that card's worth playing or not. So I'm going to let you just make those decisions, run with that. Kind of makes it fun. Now we're starting off with Selesnya, which is white and green. And their mechanic, which is an oldie but goodie, is Convoke. Convoke means you can tap creatures when you go to play this spell to reduce its cost by 1 colorless or 1 color of the tapped creature. And basically Selesnya wants to go wide, it wants to get creatures down ASAP, and then use those creatures to convoke out their bigger spells like Siegeworm here. If you can get 5/5 trample creatures down, say turn 4 or 5, you're going to have a really good chance of winning the game, and Convoking will allow you to play these spells much earlier than normal, and hopefully allow you to close the game out sooner rather than later. Other cards to keep an eye out for, some great removal, is Conclave Tribunal. It's just a great card in general. You're happy to play it even before it had Convoke. Now the fact that it does just makes it that much better. Luminous Bonds is always good, because it's always good. And Demotion is nice, but remember, they can still attack when they're demoted, so this is best served on cards that are making your attacks pretty rough because they have a really good blocker, or they have some ability that you have no other way to deal with. Speaking of big creatures, we got Arboretum Elemental. It's a huge creature with hexproof, which I don't like whatsoever, but you can convoke this thing out. This thing is going to be annoying to deal with, to say the least. Conclave Guildmage is really nice in that it gives your big creatures trample and will cause your opponents to have to use removal on either your big threat or the thing that's giving it trample, as well as continues to grow your board out wider and wider. I'm seeing Conclave Guildmage as a really solid 2-drop. And now you may be wondering, if I can convoke big stuff out, where's a bigger creature? Let me see the biggest creature this set has to offer. Well, this card's as big as your imagination. So World Soul Colossus, you literally can convoke out the biggest creature your deck will allow whenever you have it in your hand. So go nuts, make it a 40-40, and have a great time. The final card that I'll call out is Flower or Flourish. Now you may be thinking, wait, is that like a 2-in-1? I mean, kind of. It's a split card, so you can only cast one of the sides, and then it goes to the graveyard like a normal spell. What you'll notice, though, is the first one, on the left side, can be cast using either color for the guild. So those little half mana circles mean you can use either white or green to pay for it. Then you'll notice the right side requires you to have both white and green mana, which will be seen on every split card in this set. One side you can use a combo of the 2 colors, the other side will require both colors of mana. But from a high level, that's Selesnya. You're playing a lot of small creatures down as quickly as possible, you're trying to go as wide as you can, and then using those creatures as a resource to get your really big bodies down ASAP. And there's nothing stopping you from swinging for the win with a lot of ankle biters. You're more than welcome to, but it is kind of fun to swing in with a monstrously large creature. Next up we have Golgari, which is black and green, and they have a new mechanic called Undergrowth. And Undergrowth isn't the same for every card that has the mechanic, but what is consistent about it is that it is always curious about the number of creature cards in your graveyard. For example, we have Necrotic Wound. For 1 black, it takes care of hopefully any creature you need it to. The -X is also really nice because there is a fair bit of indestructible in this set, which this will deal with. Crawl Harpooner is a really solid card. Just having reach by itself is a really nice play. The fact that it will more than likely take care of your opponent's largest flyer too, as soon as it comes into play, even if it is to trade, is well worth it. This is an awesome card. You're probably happy to play as many copies as you can get because green decks typically struggle with flying and evasion, which Crawl Harpooner is going to help you deal with. Golgari Findbroker is nice because it can get cards that may have gotten into your graveyard a bit too soon that you didn't want there quite yet back into your hand. Now it's great if you can get creatures into the graveyard sooner than later so you can start using Undergrowth ASAP, but if you ended up with a bomb getting there far too soon, this card gets it back for you. Definitely keep this one in mind. Next is Undercity Uprising, which is probably one of, if not the best commons for Golgari. It's awesome removal. It makes all of your creatures a threat to the board when they attack now because they have Death Touch. So if you like Golgari, you're going to love this card and you're going to want multiple copies in your deck. And then think of the game progressing a bit, and you've got this graveyard full of creatures, but you need a bomb of sorts that really helps you take full advantage to finish off your opponent. Well, Lotleth Giant is here to pave the way to victory. It deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature you have in your graveyard. It's expensive, but 7 mana should be doable, and hitting them for a chunk of damage plus a big body is pretty effective in limited. Okran Assassin is probably one of my favorite cards in the set. It's for 1, a black and a green. You get a 1/1 with Death Touch, but when it attacks, all creatures able to block it must do so. So you can use this creature as an Alpha Strike, or just attack into whatever and use its 1 damage to get rid of their best blocker, or you can pump it with a spell and then use it as a board wipe. It's a very versatile card. I really do like it. It is definitely one of my favorite cards. And then we'll end Golgari with a nice split card, which is Status or Statue. Status is basically trade my smallest creature for whatever you blocked or attacked with, because now I'm giving it Death Touch. Or their Statue, which is just straight up removal at instant speed for whatever artifact, creature, or enchantment you want gone. I also like having some main board options to deal with artifacts and enchantments, especially in limited. I know some people don't like to have a card that's specifically designated for just that purpose, but a card like this that gives you that bonus, that flexibility, is super good and very effective in a limited deck. Next up is Dimir. They're black and blue, and their new mechanic is Surveil. Now, Surveil, you might think of it like Scribe, but instead of putting the card on top of your library or the bottom of your library, it goes to the top of your library or the graveyard. Now, you may be thinking, isn't that worse? No, no, no. It is far better, especially in Guilds of Ravnica. Right now, it's the front runner and the overall consensus for the best mechanic in the set. 1, because it is so prevalent within the guild, and 2, because it just helps you get the cards you need where you need them. Wait a second. If I can put a card in the graveyard, doesn't that help me maybe get Undergrowth going? So let's definitely keep that in mind, how these guilds can synergize together as we're going through the rest of these cards. Now for Dimir, starting off with probably one of the best crossovers in MTG history, this is clearly a Pokeball used to tap down a creature indefinitely. Well done. There was a flavor text for it from Ash Ketchum, but it didn't fit on the card. We'll have to move on. Price of Fame is great. A really great removal spell. 3 and a black for instant speed removal that also lets you Surveil too. That's just amazing. Oh, and if you're targeting a legendary creature, well, don't worry, your removal is now cheaper to get rid of that amazing card. The creature probably deserved it though, right? 2 personal favorites for this set are Thoughtbound Phantasm and Dimir Spybug. These cards are 100% going to be a problem for your opponent. You're going to have no problem surveilling to pump these cards up, which means these things are going to be huge and difficult to deal with. Especially with Dimir Spybug having Menace, your opponent's really going to struggle to be able to block it effectively, and anything that causes an opponent to use premium removal on a 1 or 2 drop is a win in my book. And one of my favorite gold commons is Artful Takedown for 2, a blue and a black. It's an instant that you can choose 1 or both. Tap target creature, or target creature gets -2/-4 till end of turn. That's a big deal because it's going to deal with stuff that has Indestructible. They try and swing for the win, you tap something down and remove something. Or you want to swing for the win, you tap something down and remove something. It's just a really strong card. If you're playing Dimir, you're going to be really happy to have this or multiple copies of this in your deck. Then there's Discovery or Dispersal, which is probably my favorite non-rare split card. It either gets you a card you're probably very happy to get into your hand, or it gives you the ability to remove your opponent's most threatening permanent off the board. You wait till they have no cards in hand, you then return their biggest permanent to their hand, they have to discard it, problem solved. Next up we have Izzet, which is blue and red, and their new mechanic is Jumpstart. You can cast a card with Jumpstart from the graveyard by discarding a card and then paying for that spell's mana cost. So it's really nice if you're stuck with land in your hand, but you have cards with Jumpstart in the graveyard, you basically discard that land, it becomes that spell all of a sudden, and then you tap your land, pay it, and then you exile the spell afterwards. Some of the most exciting cards for Izzet, Lava Coil, which is super good. It exiles the target if it dies, which is great because now you don't have to worry about any graveyard shenanigans. That's a really solid thing for this set. Don't like Control? Well, neither does Inescapable Blaze. It's a 6 damage, can't be countered. It's not amazing, but I just figured it'd be a nice finisher to show you. And if you're an anti-blue player, here's a card that you're just going to be happy to throw to spite anyone that tries to counter it. Crackling Drake will be a great creature that you're happy to play in just about every Izzet deck you can find it. The fact that it replaces itself when you get to draw a card is super nice. The fact that it counts all spells you've played that are in the graveyard and exiled means it's going to have a respectable power, most likely as soon as you play it onto the battlefield. Hypothesizzle, crazy name, I know. The art is cool though. For 3, a blue and a red, you get to draw 2 cards and basically kill a problem creature on the other side of the board. Yeah, that's pretty solid. And you can say, I will draw 2 and sizzle that creature right there. No hypothesizzling about it. Then we have Sonic Assault for 1, a blue and a red. It taps target creature at instant speed and then deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. So what's nice is if your opponent's trying to line up a really nice attack, you tap down that creature, they take some damage, and then when they hopefully forget about this card, you jumpstart it from your graveyard, tap that creature down again, deal them more damage, and now you have a pretty advantageous situation. Or you can use it too to play it twice in one turn, tap 2 creatures down, deal them 4 damage, and hopefully be able to swing for the win. And then we have Invert or Invent. Invert will be updated to read until end of turn, so there will be switch the power and toughness of each of up to 2 target creatures until end of turn. What this does is it turns a bad combat situation into a good combat situation, or you can use it to say, oh, I attack with my 1/3, they say no blocks, you switch it to a 3/1, now they're taking 3 damage. That's a pretty awesome situation, or it just makes a bad blocking, bad attacking situation better for you. And then there's Invent, which is really nice because it gets you up to 2 cards with a sorcery and or instant, so you can play this, hopefully get the 2 spells you need to close out the game. And now last, but certainly not least, is Boros, which is white and red, and their new mechanic is Mentor. Mentor is whenever a creature with Mentor attacks, it may give another attacking creature a +1/+1 counter as long as it has lower power. So basically, if you attack with a 3/3 that has Mentor and a 2/2, that 2/2 now becomes a 3/3. Something to keep in mind, again, it's going to be a pre-release, so hopefully it's a bit more casual and people can stop and learn and make sure stuff's done correctly. But with mentoring, you want to make sure that you layer the mentor triggers correctly. You can imagine if you've got 3, 4, 5 creatures with mentor attacking, you're going to want to just take a second, make sure you have all your attacks lined up correctly, the ordering of the triggers, just to make sure everything gets its +1/+1 counter as you intend. Now, one card I'm genuinely excited to play with is Truefire Captain. Truefire Captain is a 4/3 for 4, which isn't phenomenal value. It has Mentor though, so that's really nice. Oh, and if your opponent wants to damage it to death, well, Truefire Captain is going down swinging, and it's going to deal whatever damage is done to it to that player. So definitely keep your eye out for abilities that would keep Truefire Captain on the battlefield, especially if they're looking like they would take lethal damage. Something that pumps it up, something that makes it indestructible, something that makes it so it can take damage but not die. You've got a card like Goblin Crater Maker, which is going to be a 2/2 for 2 mana, which is great, but then you can pay 1 colorless to sacrifice it to either deal 2 damage to another creature, so it's kind of a removal spell, or you can sacrifice it and destroy target colorless non-land permanent. So basically any artifacts, any colorless creatures are going to be destroyed. That's great flexibility and allows your deck to adapt to different threats, so I'm a big fan of Goblin Crater Maker. Also, the art's pretty funny. I wonder where the craters come from, probably where he used to be. Then there's Legion Guildmage, which is for red and a white, you get a 2/2. You can pay 5 and a red to have it deal 3 damage to each opponent, which is pretty solid, especially when you get into that grindy part of the game. Or you can pay 2 and a white to tap down another target creature. It's a shame because you'd probably just want to tap itself, but in case you don't, you actually want to use it for something valuable, you can now tap down your opponent's biggest threat. And that's awesome value from a 2-drop. Another favorite gold card of mine, especially for Boros, is Sky Knight Legionnaire. It's for 1, a red and a white. You get a 2/2 flying haste creature. This is definitely going to be a problem card, especially once you start getting mentors down that can make it a 3/3 or a 4/4. That is a big threat that your opponent is going to have to deal with ASAP. And then last but not least, Boros has this Swath Cutter Giant. As you can tell, the art's pretty sweet. It's a giant, and it's not messing around. For 4, a red and a white, you get a 5/5 with Vigilance. Whenever Swath Cutter Giant attacks, it deals 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. So they're not going to be able to really throw tokens down and wall up or chump block all of your big threats. This thing's going to clear the board, your opponent's board, pretty quickly, and that's awesome value, especially when you're trying to go wide and get through with all of your fairly decent, respectable sized creatures. For a split card, we have Integrity or Intervention. Integrity is a classic pump spell, and then Intervention is a bolt something for 3 damage and then gain some life. Classic Boros, it's a solid play. I really like these split cards. Overall, I'm just excited for all of these guilds to try them all out. Now let's revisit our earlier thought of, doesn't this guild pair really well with that guild? And yeah, Wizards did an awesome job with each of the 5 guilds kind of having a partner in crime, or at least 1 or 2 guilds that pair really well and synergize well with the new mechanic or the effect that that guild has. Dimir and Izzet share blue, and what's nice about surveilling with Dimir is that you can get cards that you don't really need right now into your graveyard and then jumpstart them later. Izzet and Boros share red, which is really nice because if you have your legion of aggro creatures, you now are going to have more access to burn spells to burn down good defenders your opponent may have, or just find that damage to finish your opponent off. Boros and Selesnya share white, which is very helpful because, again, you can go wide, but you can go wide for the Selesnya effect of going convoking, big stuff out, or you're going to be able to mentor all the tokens you've played to make them bigger, more sustainable threats. Selesnya and Golgari complement each other really well because Selesnya allows you to go wide, but it also gives you creatures that when they die, replace themselves with tokens. So you still have the ability to convoke stuff out while filling your graveyard for undergrowth. And then there's Golgari and Dimir, which I like a lot because you can surveil cards to the graveyard, and this allows you to get into your deck really quickly, get creatures into your graveyard quickly, maximize that undergrowth ability, and find your bombs. But with that said, not everyone likes playing the same thing. You may get stuck with a guild with a seeded pack that you didn't want just because they ran out of the one you did, or just more people showed up, or whatever reason that LGS or that pre-release has going on. Just run with it, because at the end of the day, you're not guaranteed whatever based on your seeded pack. Just hope that whatever you do end up with is fun, and it looks like every guild, honestly, is going to be pretty fun to play. And then hopefully the cards we just went through will help you best understand which guild your sealed pool is best suited to play with. Maybe you even have 2 guilds you're between, maybe it makes sense to splash those together a bit. Either way, I think you're going to have a pretty fun time because of how great this set looks. I don't think any of these guilds are vastly underpowered. I don't think you're going to be at a massive disadvantage no matter what guild you end up with. But if you really want me to give you my final breakdown, 1 through 5, how do I order them? Here we go. First, I have Dimir. Dimir I have as number 1 because it has the most of its mechanic in the set. There are 21 surveil cards in this set, which is crazy. It is so far beyond all the other guilds. I think it's a little unfair. It's hard to find really evident weaknesses with this guild too. There's good plays all across the mana curve. It's got good evasion, it's got the removal, it's got the ability to get you the cards you need when you need them. It's just a really solid guild. My second is actually Selesnya because there are the second most for its mechanic in the set. There's 14 convoke cards in this set. I think they have some really good just built-in synergies of getting cards down quick, being able to build your board out quick, and then being able to really play down some difficult to deal with cards like this thing with hexproof. I do think Selesnya will struggle, though, with decks that have good evasion quickly that can just try and race that win before you start getting your big bodies down. For third, I'm pretty torn on third. Right now I have it as Izzet. I kind of want to put Golgari as third and then Izzet as fourth, but Izzet has the lowest number of cards with its mechanic in the set. There's only 10 jumpstart cards in the entire set, which is crazy that it's less than half of the Dimir and Surveilling. That seems... Yeah, that's probably my biggest complaint about this set thus far, is that Jumpstart looks great. It looks like it could be pretty fun, but you only have 10 cards to even, have that option to play with it. I'm not sure you're going to get as much value from it as you're hoping to. But blue-red is always a strong color combination. No matter what set you look at, you can probably come up with a pretty respectable blue-red limited deck, so I'm still keeping it number 3. So number 4, I do have Golgari. There's only 12 cards with Undergrowth, but they all are pretty effective. Even though that's the second lowest for all the mechanics, I still think the fact that there's green, meaning it's going to be easier to splash in more powerful cards that you need. I also think Undergrowth is one of the abilities that scales better into the late game, so you're going to be able to take advantage of the trades and the battling going back and forth. So I think as long as it can get into a grind fest, it's going to be actually one of the stronger guilds out there. And then last but not least is Mentor. And I say it's not least because I don't know. My initial impression is that a lot of the cards, especially the cards at the 2 and 3 mana drop spot, seem like they're just filler. You're not really going to be able to mentor them very often because a lot of the red and white cards have a fairly high power, so you can't be mentored if your power isn't lower than the creature that has Mentor. So if you're not able to mentor that card, it's going to be hard to attack, especially with a low toughness. Cards that are in all the other guilds are going to be able to block fairly effectively, especially if you're attacking with, say, a 3-1 into a token. You don't want to trade your card for their token. That's just never an ideal situation. I can also see that you have to invest a lot of cards to keep your earlier plays on the board so that you don't get overrun by just the big bodies that show up later or losing the race to their evasive creatures because you can't attack through effectively. So my biggest hesitation is making sure that you can have that consistent value added through Mentor while keeping your board full. So that's kind of where my head is, and thinking Mentor may be seen as really strong because people like aggro. It did really well in M19. That's definitely a fair argument. But I'm curious to see if this format's a bit grindier, similar to Dominaria, where the aggro approach is a bit riskier than it was in M19. Things I'm generally worried about for this set is that there only ends up being one, maybe two guilds that are really competitive and everyone fights for, and then you're just struggling to find a competitive deck in the other 2, 3, 4 guilds. If drafting quickly becomes stale, that'll be a bit of a bummer. Like if you are forced into a lane and there's not as much flexibility between the guilds. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's definitely something that's crossed my mind a time or two. Because what I am really hopeful for is that synergy between the guilds is super easy to pull off. It's something that makes every draft unique and fun, and you can pull off crazy decks, and you can go for fun strategies, and you can take unique lines, and just have a good time with it. You're not just trying to play the same cards over and over. This set looks like it has a lot of flexibility to it, so I'm excited to just get in. I'm excited for my pre-release. I'm excited to start drafting on MTGO. And that's pretty much all I got. If you do go to a pre-release, definitely let me know what guild you end up playing with, or at least let me know like what seeded pack you get and then what deck you end up building. Let me know how it goes. I love hearing about pre-releases. I'm super pumped for mine. We're going to be doing a two-headed giant, so I'm going to have another video specific to what cards are better or worse in two-headed giant as well. So definitely check out my channel if you're interested in that. I'm going to be posting a lot of draft videos as well. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting that like button, subscribing, all that good stuff. But either way, as always, thank you for watching. Best of luck at your pre-release. See you in the next video.